Antarctica, its appearance, rather accurately and much as it looked during the Ice Age on ancient maps, is a real paradox and a problem which needs to be explained.
Graham Hancock stands at the intersection of archaeology and controversy, claiming he's uncovered evidence of an advanced civilization that once thrived in Antarctica before miles of ice buried it forever.
Perhaps 90 million years ago, there was a lush rainforest that is now covered in miles of ice on the Antarctic continent.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That precise projection that we find on this 1513 map, again, there's the west coast of Africa, the east coast of South America, and coming down here, we find a representation of the northern Antarctic Peninsula.
His assertions have sent shockwaves through both academic circles and public consciousness. While mainstream archaeologists dismiss his theories as pseudoscience, Hancock insists the proof is there, hidden beneath the ice and scattered across ancient maps and mysterious expeditions.
Reports indicated that one known as Admiral Byrd was to be recommissioned and he was to be sent in there to retrieve the two saucers.
Graham Hancock isn't your typical fringe theorist shouting into the void. He's a British journalist and author who spent over 3 decades investigating archaeological mysteries that mainstream academics prefer to ignore. His 1995 book, Fingerprints of the Gods, became an international bestseller, proposing that an advanced Ice Age civilization existed before recorded history and was wiped out by a global cataclysm around 12,800 years ago. Hancock's background in journalism gives him a unique perspective. He's not bound by academic orthodoxy, which means he can ask questions that tenured professors might avoid. His work combines ancient mythology, geological evidence, and astronomical alignments to paint a picture of prehistory that's far more complex than the standard textbook narrative. The archaeological establishment has largely rejected his theories, calling them speculative and lacking in rigorous scientific methodology. Yet Hancock's influence extends far beyond academia. His Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse, reached millions of viewers, reigniting public interest in lost civilizations and alternative history. Love him or hate him, he's forced conversations about gaps in our historical understanding. When Hancock turned his attention to Antarctica, he brought decades of research suggesting that advanced societies existed during the last ice age. His Antarctica claims aren't isolated. They're the culmination of a broader theory about human civilization that's been developing throughout his career.
You can see mountains on the Orontius Phineas map version.
Oh, is that what the little etchings
around the
are?
edges there?
Interesting.
Those are mountains.
The continent represents, in his view, the final piece of a global puzzle that mainstream archaeology refuses to acknowledge. The Antarctica anomaly, what Hancock actually found. Hancock hasn't personally drilled through Antarctic ice or conducted excavations on the frozen continent. His evidence comes from analysis of satellite imagery, ancient maps, geological data, and the work of other researchers who've identified unusual formations beneath the ice. He argues that certain features visible in radar scans and satellite photos don't match natural geological processes. One of his primary claims centers on what appear to be pyramid-shaped mountains in the Ellsworth Range. While geologists explain these as natural formations created by erosion and tectonic activity, Hancock questions whether all such structures can be so easily dismissed. He points out that similar formations in other parts of the world have turned out to be human-made after closer investigation. Hancock also highlights magnetic anomalies detected beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. These irregularities in the Earth's magnetic field could indicate several things from mineral deposits to volcanic activity. However, Hancock suggests they might point to something else entirely, the remnants of structures or materials left by an ancient civilization. Without excavation, which is nearly impossible under miles of ice, the core of Hancock's argument rests on timing. He proposes that Antarctica wasn't always the frozen wasteland we know today. Between roughly 14,000 and 11,000 years ago, as the last ice age was ending, parts of Antarctica might have been ice-free, or at least more habitable than today. If an advanced civilization existed during that window, and if they had the maritime capabilities to reach the continent, they could have established settlements there before the ice returned. Hancock references the work of Professor Charles Hapgood, who proposed the theory of crustal displacement. This controversial idea suggests the Earth's crust can shift rapidly, moving continents to different latitudes. If Antarctica was once positioned further north, it would have enjoyed a temperate climate before shifting to its current polar location. While crustal displacement remains outside mainstream geological consensus, Hancock uses it to explain how a civilization could have flourished there. The most intriguing aspect of Hancock's claims is the suggestion that this Antarctic civilization wasn't isolated. He proposes it was part of a global maritime culture that left traces across multiple continents, from Egypt to South America to Southeast Asia. Antarctica, in this framework, might have been a hub or homeland of this lost culture before catastrophic climate change buried all evidence beneath ice. The Piri Reis map and the ice-free Antarctica mystery. In 1929, a group of historians examining the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul discovered a gazelle skin parchment that would fuel decades of speculation. The Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, shows the Atlantic Ocean with surprising accuracy, along with portions of the Americas, Africa, and curiously, what appears to be the northern coastline of Antarctica. Here's where things get interesting. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years after Piri Reis drew his map. Moreover, the coastline depicted on the map appears to show features that would only be visible without ice coverage. Modern seismic surveys have revealed the actual rock coastline beneath the ice, and some researchers, including Hancock, argue there are striking similarities to what Piri Reis drew 5 centuries ago. Piri Reis himself noted that his map was compiled from about 20 source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great or even earlier. This raises a profound question. If the map accurately depicts Antarctica's ice-free coastline, who mapped it originally and when? The conventional explanation is that the southern portion of the map doesn't show Antarctica at all, but rather a distorted view of South America's coast. Professor Hapgood, whose work Hancock frequently cites, submitted the map to the United States Air Force in 1960 for analysis. The response, from the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron, stated that the geographical details shown in the lower part of the map agreed very remarkably with seismic data of Antarctica's true coastline. However, this assessment wasn't a peer-reviewed scientific study, and many cartographers have since disputed these conclusions. The debate over the Piri Reis map illustrates a broader pattern in Hancock's methodology. He identifies genuinely puzzling historical artifacts and asks legitimate questions about them. The problem, critics say, is that he often leaps to extraordinary conclusions without considering more mundane explanations. In this case, cartographic errors, artistic interpretation, and the use of old source maps might explain the apparent Antarctica coastline without requiring a lost civilization. Yet, the map remains genuinely mysterious. Even skeptics acknowledge that Piri Reis achieved remarkable accuracy for his time, particularly regarding the South American coastline. Whether this extends to depicting an ice-free Antarctica is where consensus breaks down, and where Hancock sees an opening for his broader theories about ancient maritime civilizations with geographical knowledge that supposedly shouldn't exist. Operation High Jump and the strange military interest. In August 1946, just after World War II ended, the United States Navy launched the largest expedition to Antarctica in history. Called Operation High Jump and officially termed the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program, the mission involved over 4,700 personnel, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft.
They were taken into Antarctica, into a section of Antarctica called Queen's Maud's Land. And there they disappeared, and they were not heard of for some time.
Leading the expedition was Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, one of the most celebrated polar explorers of his era. The official objectives were straightforward, establishing a research base called Little America 4, training personnel and testing equipment in frigid conditions, and conducting scientific experiments. The Navy also wanted to assert American presence in Antarctica and gather data about the continent's geography and resources. These were reasonable Cold War-era priorities as nations jockeyed for position in the developing geopolitical landscape. However, the expedition ended earlier than planned. Scheduled for 6 to 8 months, Operation High Jump returned after just 8 weeks. The Navy cited difficult ice conditions and equipment failures, but this premature conclusion sparked decades of speculation. Admiral Byrd gave several interviews after returning, and some of his statements, particularly one about resources and land beyond the pole, have been endlessly analyzed by conspiracy theorists. Hancock and others interested in Antarctic mysteries point to Operation High Jump as evidence that something unusual was discovered. The theory goes that the expedition found remnants of an ancient civilization or encountered something unexpected that prompted the early withdrawal. The military nature of the mission, combined with its scale and abrupt ending, feeds suspicions that the official story doesn't tell the whole truth. Skeptics note that there's nothing particularly suspicious about the expedition once you examine the historical record. The logistics of maintaining such a large operation in Antarctica proved more challenging than anticipated. Equipment malfunctioned in the extreme cold, accidents occurred, and the approaching Antarctic winter made continued operations dangerous. The early departure makes perfect sense without invoking hidden discoveries. What Hancock finds compelling is the pattern. Why did so many nations suddenly become interested in Antarctica immediately after World War II? Operation High Jump was followed by other expeditions from various countries, all claiming scientific purposes. The subsequent Antarctic Treaty of 1959, which preserved the continent for peaceful scientific research and prohibited military activities, could be seen as nations cooperating or as an agreement to keep certain discoveries secret. The science, what geologists actually know about Antarctica's past. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. About 55 million years ago, during the Eocene epoch, the continent enjoyed a temperate climate with forests and diverse wildlife. Fossil evidence shows that palm trees and other warm weather vegetation once thrived there. However, this was tens of millions of years before humans evolved, making it irrelevant to Hancock's civilizational claims. The more relevant time frame is the recent geological past. The Antarctic ice sheet began forming around 34 million years ago and has grown and contracted through various climate cycles since then. During the coldest periods of ice ages, the ice was even more extensive than today. During warmer interglacial periods, some coastal areas might have experienced temporary ice retreat. The last time significant portions of Antarctica were ice-free was before the ice sheet's formation, which places it far outside the window of human civilization. However, there's legitimate scientific debate about the extent and timing of ice coverage in specific regions, particularly the Antarctic Peninsula, which extends furthest north and experiences slightly warmer conditions than the rest of the continent. Core samples taken from beneath the ice provide detailed climate records going back hundreds of thousands of years. These show temperature fluctuations but don't support the idea that Antarctica experienced ice-free conditions during the time frame when human civilizations could have existed. When humans were developing agriculture and building monuments, Antarctica was already buried under ice. Hancock challenges this consensus by suggesting the timeline might be wrong or that localized ice-free pockets existed longer than currently believed. He points to the end of the Younger Dryas period, around 11,600 years ago, when global temperatures rose rapidly. This warming event melted ice sheets covering North America and Europe. Could similar warming have temporarily exposed parts of Antarctica? The scientific answer is nuanced. While the Younger Dryas ending brought global warming, Antarctica's polar location and elevation meant it remained largely frozen. Ice core data from Antarctica shows the continent was already deeply glaciated throughout the period when Hancock suggests a civilization might have existed there. However, some coastal regions in the Antarctic Peninsula might have experienced seasonal ice-free conditions, though this remains speculative. Modern research continues to reveal surprises about Antarctica. Subglacial lakes discovered beneath the ice show that liquid water exists even under tremendous ice pressure. Volcanic activity creates pockets of warmth that could theoretically support microbial life. These discoveries don't validate Hancock's civilizational theories, but they do demonstrate that Antarctica is more dynamic and complex than previously understood. Gobekli Tepe and the global pattern Hancock connects. In southeastern Turkey, atop a windswept hill, lies Gobekli Tepe, an archaeological site that has fundamentally challenged our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. Built approximately about 11,600 years ago, it predates Stonehenge by over 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by more than 7,000 years. This wasn't a settlement, but a massive ritual complex featuring intricately carved stone pillars arranged in circles, some weighing over 10 tons. What makes Gobekli Tepe revolutionary is its age relative to the supposed development of civilization. According to traditional archaeological timelines, humans 11,600 years ago were hunter-gatherers who hadn't yet developed agriculture or permanent settlements. Building something as sophisticated as Gobekli Tepe should have been beyond their capabilities. Yet there it stands, forcing archaeologists to reconsider the trajectory of human development. For Hancock, Gobekli Tepe is vindication. He's long argued that human civilization is older and more sophisticated than mainstream archaeology acknowledges. If hunter-gatherers could build Gobekli Tepe, what else were they capable of? And more importantly, who taught them or inspired them? Hancock proposes that survivors of his theorized Ice Age civilization spread across the world after a cataclysm, bringing advanced knowledge to various regions. This is where Antarctica enters the picture. Hancock's theory requires a source civilization, an advanced culture that existed before the Younger Dryas impact event that he believes devastated the world around 12,800 years ago. Antarctica, if it had habitable regions during the Ice Age, could have been home to such a civilization. When catastrophe struck, survivors fled to other continents, eventually inspiring sites like Gobekli Tepe. The pattern Hancock identifies includes other sites built with sophisticated astronomical alignments and massive stone construction. The Sphinx in Egypt, which some researchers believe is far older than the traditionally accepted 4,500 years. The stone platforms of Baalbek in Lebanon. The precisely fitted megalithic walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. These structures, built by supposedly unconnected ancient cultures, share architectural similarities that Hancock argues point to common origins. Critics counter that similar solutions to similar problems don't require a lost civilization to explain. Humans across different cultures independently developed pyramid shapes for monumental architecture because pyramids are structurally stable and impressive. Astronomical alignments emerge naturally when cultures observe the sky and develop calendars. Sophisticated stonework simply indicates that ancient people were clever and capable. Yet Gobekli Tepe's discovery has undeniably shifted the conversation. Mainstream archaeologists now acknowledge that Neolithic humans possessed greater organizational and technical capabilities than previously thought. Whether this validates Hancock's Antarctica connection is another matter entirely. The site proves human ingenuity existed earlier than expected, but doesn't necessarily prove the existence of a predecessor civilization that taught them. The mainstream backlash. Why archaeologists reject these claims. The archaeological establishment doesn't simply disagree with Hancock. Many actively oppose his work. The Society for American Archaeology even issued statements criticizing ancient apocalypse, calling it pseudo-archaeology that undermines scientific understanding. But why such strong opposition to what could be dismissed as entertaining speculation? Professional archaeologists point to Hancock's methodology as fundamentally flawed. Science requires testable hypotheses, peer-reviewed research, and evidence that can be independently verified. The lake demonstrates that liquid water and potentially life can exist in Antarctica's extreme conditions. Over 400 other subglacial lakes have now been identified using ice-penetrating radar and satellite measurements. Some are connected by rivers flowing beneath the ice, creating an entire hidden hydrological system. These discoveries show that Antarctica isn't the static frozen desert it appears, but rather a dynamic environment with active geology and hydrology beneath the surface. In 2016, researchers announced the discovery of a 300-meter-wide circular structure beneath Antarctic ice using gravity mapping technology. The Wilkes Land anomaly, located in East Antarctica, created excitement because its size and shape resembled an impact crater. Some researchers proposed it might be from a massive asteroid strike, while others cautioned that volcanic activity or other geological processes could explain it. Pyramid-shaped mountains in the Ellsworth Range have been photographed by research expeditions and widely circulated online. While geologists explain these as natural formations created by freeze-thaw weathering that can create angular pyramid-like shapes, the resemblance to artificial structures is admittedly striking. Similar natural pyramid formations exist in other mountain ranges, but that doesn't stop speculation. Magnetic anomalies detected in various Antarctic locations also generate interest. The Earth's magnetic field isn't uniform, and variations can indicate different types of rock or mineral concentrations beneath the surface. Some anomalies in Antarctica are stronger than expected, leading to questions about what's causing them. Scientific explanations focus on volcanic rock and iron deposits, but the incomplete mapping of what lies beneath the ice leaves room for uncertainty. More intriguing are recent studies of Antarctic ice cores, revealing traces of tropical plant species dating to periods much more recent than the millions of years ago when Antarctica was last warm. Some of these pollen samples appear in layers corresponding to timeframes within the last 20,000 years, though contamination and dating uncertainties make interpretation difficult. In 2018, NASA discovered a massive cavity beneath Thwaites Glacier, roughly 2/3 the size of Manhattan and growing. While concerning for climate change implications, such voids also raise questions about what conditions exist in spaces between the ice and bedrock. Could larger caverns exist elsewhere, potentially preserving whatever existed before the ice? The proof, analyzing Hancock's strongest arguments. When pressed for his strongest evidence, Hancock typically points to a convergence of factors rather than a single smoking gun. His argument is cumulative, ancient maps showing impossible knowledge, myths from around the world describing advanced predecessor civilizations, sites like Gobekli Tepe, requiring sophisticated organization, and geological evidence that Antarctica experienced climate fluctuations during the relevant time frame. The Piri Reis map remains one of his most cited pieces of evidence. Despite debates about cartographic accuracy, the map undeniably shows something in the southern region that wasn't supposed to be known in 1513. Whether it's Antarctica or a distorted South America depends on which expert you ask, but the ambiguity itself is significant to Hancock. Why should such debate exist if the answer was clearly one or the other? Hancock also emphasizes the astronomical alignments found in ancient sites worldwide. The Great Pyramid's alignment with true north, the correlation between the Giza pyramids and Orion's belt.
Robert Brevard brought us the Orion correlation, and my God, did archaeology descend upon him like a ton of bricks for just noticing that the three Great Pyramids of Giza are laid out on the ground in the pattern of the three stars of Orion's belt.
The solar alignments at Angkor Wat and other temples, these aren't coincidences, he argues, but evidence of sophisticated astronomical knowledge that had to come from somewhere. Antarctica, visible to ancient navigators and potentially habitable in the distant past, could have been the source. The mythology argument carries weight with Hancock's audience, if not with academics. Cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years tell remarkably similar stories of great floods, lost lands, and gods or culture bringers who taught humanity after a catastrophe. The Sumerian stories, the Aztec legends, the Hindu epics, all describe advanced knowledge coming from before recorded history. These could be cultural memories of real events, Hancock suggests, specifically the destruction of his proposed Ice Age civilization.
Point I often make, which I think is worth making again and again, is how different the world was during the Ice Age. The Sahara Desert was green. It was a fertile place. Nobody's doing much archaeology in the Sahara Desert today.
Geological evidence about the Younger Dryas impact event has gained some scientific acceptance in recent years. Around 12,800 years ago, something caused rapid cooling, megafauna extinctions, and dramatic changes to human populations. Hancock points to the growing body of research suggesting a comet or asteroid impact, though the evidence remains debated. If such a catastrophe occurred, it could have devastated coastal civilizations, with rising sea levels subsequently drowning archaeological sites. The strongest aspect of Hancock's argument might be the absence of evidence in places we haven't thoroughly searched. Only a tiny fraction of the ocean floor has been mapped in detail. Antarctica remains 98% ice-covered, with vast regions never surveyed. The Amazon rainforest continues to yield discoveries of previously unknown ancient settlements. If we're still finding major sites in accessible locations, what might exist where we literally cannot look? Critics counter that we haven't found it yet isn't evidence, it's absence of evidence. The probability of a civilization leaving no trace, even accounting for ice coverage and sea level changes, seems vanishingly small. Every known civilization has left abundant archaeological signatures. Pottery alone, which is essentially indestructible, should have turned up somewhere if Hancock's global culture existed. Hancock's methodology also raises questions. He connects dots that mainstream archaeology sees as unrelated, finding patterns that might reflect human tendency toward pattern recognition rather than actual historical connections. Confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms existing beliefs, can make disparate facts seem more connected than they are. What if he's right? The implications. Imagine for a moment that Hancock is correct. Beneath Antarctica's ice lie the ruins of a sophisticated civilization that existed 12,000 years ago, possessed advanced maritime technology, and seeded knowledge across the globe before being destroyed by cataclysm. What would this mean for us? First, human history would require complete rewriting. The narrative of civilization beginning in Mesopotamia around 5,000 years ago would become just the latest chapter rather than the beginning. Textbooks, museum displays, and our fundamental understanding of human development would need revision. More importantly, it would prove that advanced civilizations can be lost, completely buried by climate and time, until barely a trace remains. The implications for technology and knowledge would be profound. If an Ice Age civilization achieved sophistication in maritime navigation, astronomy, and construction, what else did they develop? Hancock has speculated about lost technologies and scientific knowledge that might have been equal or superior to our own in specific areas. The loss of such knowledge would represent a tragedy of immeasurable proportions. Climate change takes on new meaning in this scenario. If ice buried an entire continent's worth of civilization, what could future climate shifts do to our current societies? Cities like Miami, New York, and Shanghai sit at sea levels that could be threatened by Antarctic ice melt. The cyclical nature of Earth's climate, viewed through the lens of lost civilizations, becomes more ominous. Philosophically, proof of Hancock's theory would challenge assumptions about human uniqueness and progress. We tend to view history as linear advancement, with ourselves at the pinnacle. Discovering that previous civilizations rose and fell completely would humble that perspective. It would demonstrate that sophistication doesn't protect against catastrophe, and that forgetting is possible, even on civilizational scales. The archaeological establishment would face difficult questions about why such a civilization was dismissed for so long. If Hancock, an outsider without traditional credentials, proved correct against decades of academic opposition, it would represent a massive failure of scientific orthodoxy. This might ultimately benefit archaeology by encouraging more openness to unorthodox theories and evidence. Antarctica itself would transform from a frozen scientific research zone into the most important archaeological site on Earth. International cooperation or competition would intensify around accessing what lies beneath the ice. The Antarctic Treaty might face challenges as nations debate whether to allow excavation that could damage the environment but might reveal humanity's lost history. Antarctica remains frozen, silent, and stubbornly mysterious. Whether Graham Hancock's theories about ancient civilizations buried beneath its ice will ever be proven or definitively debunked may depend on technology we don't yet possess and political will to investigate that doesn't yet exist. The ice keeps its secrets, and we're left with tantalizing hints, controversial maps, and the nagging feeling that human history might be far stranger than we've been taught. What's certain is this: Antarctica isn't done surprising us. The continent holds answers to questions we're only beginning to ask.